Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is quietly replaying a memory in their head, a moment where they were deeply, unfairly wronged. And in the absolute privacy of their own mind, they're imagining, in vivid, meticulous detail, exactly how they are going to get even. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most universal yet quietly shameful experiences a human being can have. Look, let's just be completely honest with ourselves for a second. You've done this, I've done this, we've all done this. It is an incredibly common human experience, and yet almost nobody talks about it openly. We hide it, we feel kind of embarrassed by it, and we try our best to push the thoughts away. But the real answer to why your brain actually does this is far stranger and far older than simple anger. And this brings us to a really fascinating mystery. Why does revenge feel so incredibly good to think about, even when you know, completely rationally, that it won't fix a single thing? Why do we crave payback when logic tells us it is completely useless? Well, to answer that, we have to literally look inside your head. Which brings us to part one, your brain on payback. Okay, let's dive into this and explore the actual physical mechanics of vengeance. We're going to strip away the emotion for a minute and look strictly at the neuroscience. In a landmark study published in the journal Science, led by researcher Dominique de Cravain, scientists used brain imaging to watch exactly what happens when people punish someone who has wronged them. And what they found was absolutely wild. Activity massively spikes in a region called the dorsal striatum. This is an area of the brain closely linked to reward processing. What this means is that revenge isn't just some emotional release valve. Neurologically speaking, it's a reward. Your brain is literally giving you a chemical hit of pleasure for getting even. And this brilliantly illustrates the reality of what's happening inside of us. Think about the exact same general reward circuitry that lights up when you finally eat after starving all day, or the rush you get when you win a fierce competition. That is the exact same circuitry lighting up when you take revenge. Our brains have literally mapped retaliation to our most basic, fundamental survival and competitive pathways. It's hardwired. Moving on to part two, the ancient social purpose. But we have to ask why. Evolution doesn't just hand out biological rewards for no reason, right? This reward circuitry didn't evolve just to make you feel good for the sake of it. It evolved because it served a vital life or death function for our ancestors. This brings us to a fascinating concept studied by evolutionary psychologists like Ernst Fehr, called altruistic punishment. Researchers have found that across almost every studied culture, human beings are willing to personally sacrifice their own time, their own money, and even their own physical safety just to punish someone who has broken a social rule. And they'll do this even when the punishment offers absolutely zero direct benefit to themselves. This behavior is so incredibly consistent across completely isolated societies that researchers realized it was actually a tool. Long before formal laws or police or courts ever existed, this was early humanity's social enforcement mechanism. It was how we discouraged cheating, theft, and betrayal. So that urge you feel towards someone who wronged you, that deep, burning desire for payback, it isn't simply a personal failing. As the research puts it, it is ancient community infrastructure running quietly inside a single modern brain. Your personal anger is actually a deeply ingrained survival mechanism, designed originally to protect the human tribe. But if that's true, we hit a massive contradiction. Here is the uncomfortable twist in our explainer. If this urge evolved to protect us and our brains chemically reward us for it, why does it feel so utterly awful in the aftermath when we actually go through with it? Let's explore this in part three, the vengeance paradox. This is the exact moment where the biological promise of satisfaction violently collides with actual psychological reality. Psychologists, including researcher Kevin Carl Smith, ran controlled experiments on this exact dynamic. They gave participants the very real opportunity to punish someone who had treated them unfairly. Now, the brain's prediction is clear. Participants confidently expected to feel better, to get closure, to feel emotionally satisfied. But the actual experience data, it showed the exact opposite. People who took revenge reported feeling worse. They dwelt on the incident much, much longer than the people who were denied the opportunity to retaliate at all. The brain promises you a satisfying victory, but it actually delivers a prolonged nightmare of rumination. So why does this happen? Well, social psychologists point to a very simple, almost tragic mechanic. Punishing someone forces you to keep thinking about them. You are actively extending your emotional connection to that person and the event, rather than closing it. Letting go, on the other hand, no matter how incredibly difficult it is in the heat of the moment, actually tends to shorten how long the incident occupies your mind. The dark satisfaction that revenge promises and the actual psychological aftermath you suffer through are completely mismatched, and sadly, most people don't discover this until it's too late, and they've already acted. Which leads us to part 4, fantasy versus reality. Because of that mismatch, we have to draw an enormous distinction between fantasy and reality. Mentally rehearsing getting even and actually executing that payback are two entirely different psychological beasts. Researchers studying this difference have found that imagining revenge actually has immense utility. Mentally rehearsing your payback provides a genuine, low-cost emotional release. It lets your brain experience a little hit of that dorsal striatum reward circuitry activation we talked about, but without any of the real-world destructive consequences. The fantasy actually does real psychological work. This explains why revenge fantasies are so persistent across nearly every culture in human history. They appear in ancient mythology, religious texts, and virtually every modern movie or story we consume. The fantasy safely delivers what the execution cannot. Let's move to a broader historical context and see how this builds. If actual revenge destroys the person taking it, how did human history survive at all? Anthropologists looked at traditional societies that actually formalized revenge, societies absolutely famous for blood feuds. How did they not just wipe each other off the map entirely? Well, they survived because they instinctively knew exactly how dangerous this biological alarm was. When anthropologists studied historical Mediterranean and Balkan communities with deep blood feud customs, they found that these systems were rarely about pure, unlimited retaliation. Instead, they built strict, culturally enforced boundaries. Things like proportional response, formal mediation, ritualized closure. These guardrails were designed specifically to prevent endless, escalating cycles of violence. Even societies that legally sanctioned revenge understood a core truth. Unregulated revenge burns through absolutely everything it touches. It destroys communities rather than protecting them. Let's bring this home in part 5, managing the biological alarm. Let's bring this out of the ancient Mediterranean and right back into your living room or your office. You don't need a blood feud to feel this intense pull today. A rude email, a public embarrassment, a deep betrayal by a close friend, these all trigger the exact same ancient circuitry. So the crucial point is this: we have to fundamentally reframe what this feeling actually is. Revenge is not a solution. It is a biological alarm. It's an indicator flashing red in your mind, telling you that a social rule has been broken and that something needs to be addressed. It is not a blueprint for action. It is simply a warning light on your dashboard. Once you recognize it as an alarm, you can actually turn it off properly. Modern psychologists studying anger management echo the exact same findings derived from decades of evolutionary research. If you want lasting relief, you don't pursue raw payback. You follow structured, deliberate steps. 1. You address the harm directly. 2. You set a firm boundary. And 3. You seek resolution. This deliberate, measured response heals the psychology in a way that raw retaliation never, ever does. I want to leave you with this thought today. If you are replaying a moment in your head right now, imagining how to get even, that urge is not a flaw in your character. It is a powerful signal inherited from thousands of generations of humans who needed a way to protect their communities from harm. It's natural, it's deeply human, but the dark satisfaction it promises is a fleeting illusion. What actually heals the wound underneath rarely comes from where the fantasy told you to look. So, the next time that ancient alarm starts ringing in your modern brain, you have a choice to make. Will you blindly chase the destructive fantasy, or will you learn to listen to the signal and heal the wound yourself? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.